Tell them the God of your ancestors is called I am who I am. And that happens to be Yahweh. I am. It's not a name. It is simply an assertion. I really do exist. And that name, Yahweh, which describes God's existence, is firstly interpreted I am, but it can be interpreted in many other ways. Yahweh means is. That's a pretty simple little word. Our God's name is. Our God's name is I cause to be. Our God's name is power. Our God's name is I will to create. Those are the ways in which we talk about our God, and they are not names, they are simply assertions. I truly do exist, and I act upon my creation. When God says, I am, He is establishing that over and against all of the gods of the Midianites and the Egyptians and the Babylonians and the Persians, that our God is a real God. Our God's name is. The other gods are called is not. Our God's name is I am. The other God's name is I am not. Our God's name is power. Their name is no power. Our God is called I will to create. The other gods are called I will nothing. Perhaps the best interpretation of Yahweh is I will what I will. So in that little assertion from God in identifying himself to Moses, we have this massive change in understanding of who this God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel is. He is not like Baal or Ra or Shamash or Ashtaroth. They are gods of a certain place or a certain object or a certain group of people. Our God is, and our God wills to act upon the creation that is all around us. It's later in Exodus 34:7 that we see more descriptive words applied to God that fill out that sense of I will. That's who I am. In Exodus 34 it says, God says, I will justice, I will compassion, I will grace. And that means I am the God who sees hurt, I feel the hurt, and I act to end the hurt. What a strange thing it is to be a people who worship a God who really does not have a name. But what we need to realize is that our God is what our God does. The idea is brought to wonderful fruition in the New Testament. Perhaps in the first letter of John, when John says, Beloved, let us love one another. For love is of God, and whoever loves is born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, for God is love. And if anyone ever asks you, what is the name of the God that you worship, you can tell them, my God's name is love. My God's name is justice. My God's name is compassion. My God's name is grace. You know, even in the New Testament, with the coming of Jesus Christ, our Messiah, we still do not have a God who has a name. And you might say, but God was in Jesus, so our God's name is Jesus, Christ, Messiah. None of those is a name. All three of those words are simply a description of what God does. Jesus means one who saves. Christ means one who saves. Messiah means one who saves. We do not know our God's name because it is high and far above us. But we do know what our God does, and we do know what our God wills. The sermon today was supposed to be about learning God's will, and you might say, well, we have not learned God's will at this point. All we have learned is God's name. But if you know God's name, then you know God's will. If you know that God's name is justice, compassion, and grace, if you know that God is love, then you know God's name. When Moses went back to those people, they did in fact say to him, "Who sent you? What is the name of the God of our ancestors?" And Moses said to them, "His name is I am. I will." Your God wills justice. Your God wills compassion. Your God wills grace. Who is your God? This is who your God is. Your God has seen the yoke of oppression on your backs, and it is your God's will to lift it off and lead you out to the promised land, to a land flowing with milk and honey. Your God's name is, I have seen your burden, and I will to lift it from you. There is more authenticity in that description of God than there could ever have been in any name applied to God. And now, knowing the words that describe God, Moses has a purpose. He knows what he has to do. He is going to fulfill the will of the great I Am, who says, "Lift the burden from my people. Take the yoke of oppression from their backs and lead them to freedom." 1,000 years later, the will of God was the same as in the deserts of Midian on that day. When Jesus came into the world, he saw that his people were enslaved, just like the people in Egypt. But now the slaves of sin and guilt and fear, and he said to them, "Come unto me, all you who labor and are heavy laden. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. You shall find rest unto your souls." The will of God has always been the same, to lift the yoke of the oppressor and put upon us a yoke that is easy and light.